Hello, everybody. So let me share with you today something that I get a lot of questions about in satsang, and I get a lot of email about it, and I get comments on YouTube or the website or whatever asking about this topic that we're going to bring up. And it seems to be broad. It doesn't happen to everybody, and it doesn't need to happen to everybody. If it needs to happen to you, it will. And if it does happen to you, it's not an accident. That's precisely what should be occurring. Nonetheless, I can give a few pointers on how to deal with this, perhaps. So I'm talking about dark nights of the soul. And we hear a lot about dark nights of the soul in pre-awakening. There's the awakening here there was a dark night of the soul prior to that. You listen to Eckhart's or Byron Katie's or some of these people, and not all of them, but for a lot of them, there was a pinnacle of pain. There was a place where it just felt like everything hurt, and a place where it felt like I can't take any more of this. It's just, and there comes in a little bit of the victim mentality of why me, right? And it did here. So I'm not saying that it shouldn't. I'm just saying what can we do about it? And what we can do about it is see the truth of these dark nights. So dark nights in pre-awakening are actually the same thing as dark nights in post-awakening. They are apparently different, but they're only different in appearance, because when I deal with them, it's always the same essential advice. I mean, it varies from case to case, but the common factor is that there is somebody who's having a dark night of the soul. And this is the painful part. There can't be a dark night of the soul unless there's someone having it. Because if you would just notice right now, you could do it with me here, that if we just imagine right now that the body disappeared, what would you then have to complain about? The body disappears, poof. Now notice that body disappearing doesn't actually make any difference to me. I'm not speaking of consciousness when I say that, but I'm speaking of that which is prior to consciousness. It's unaffected. See, the unborn is not affected by life or death. But that's what we forget. We forget we're the unborn. We come to believe that we are an entity that was born. We are an entity that lives its own path. And then it's an entity that dies. And God Almighty, we lose this precious consciousness, this memory, all of this stuff that's made sense out of this gobbledygook that's here, that's really here. So the problem in every case that I can think of, just right offhand, as I'm sure there must be some exception, but the problem to all suffering, as far as I can tell, is identification. I'm not talking about pain. I'm talking about suffering. Suffering is caused through identification. There can be no suffering unless there's a sufferer. It does not mean that there can't be pain. There is pretty substantial pain here every day of my life, and every day of this life. And it doesn't fall within the unit's preferences, but I don't have any sense that it's a mistake. I don't have any sense that there shouldn't be any suffering occurring. Just like the pain, I don't have any sense that I don't have any sense that that there shouldn't be this pain. I have no story of that whatsoever. There is this pain. Okay, Is it mine? Absolutely not. Can I really pull away from pain? Not when I'm in the throes of it. I mean, when I get sharp pains in my arms or my hands or whatever, and it's just like, oh, there's no, I mean, there's a sense of identification that comes in, and when it does, it suffers. First thing that identification does, it causes suffering, because obviously it ought not to be like this. But in anything other than the cute surprise pain that just comes out, like there's pain over here right now, there's a good bit, but it's not the sharp nerve type pain that can occur over here, and that regularly does. But that really sharp pain, it doesn't last very long. Now the memory of it lasts virtually forever. It's I can remember that I was in pain, and if I remember that I was in pain, I can project the fact that I'm going to be in pain again tomorrow. But without owning this pain, there's pain for these few brief seconds. And then there's this pain that is pretty much a constant here. But that pain is not, that's not in error. That pain doesn't cause identification. It used to. It used to be quite a running story over here about how, I mean, I kind of thought when I woke up that my deal was I was out of pain. That's what I was hoping for, but that's not what I got. If that's what you're hoping for, you're going to be disappointed too. A lot of people turn to me because they're in a great deal of pain. They have, some of them have terminal illnesses where there's a lot of pain involved. And I don't have a cure for that. This is not an emergency room. This is a hospital here, but it's not an emergency room. I can't come in and slip you some spiritual opioids that will make the pain go away physically, right? What I can do is I can just simply help you not to suffer so much about that, if you'll let me. But you have to be willing to let me help you. It sounds very weird, but because the deal I'm trying to make with everybody is I'm trying to offer them everything in exchange for nothing. And that's actually a very hard deal to make. Most people will not accept that deal. They won't even really consider that deal. It doesn't even get to me, right? I don't even get to offer it to them. But some people you can offer this to, and they just flat out won't take it. And when I say they won't take it, I mean they can't take it. But the problem is they can't take it is that everybody throws up their arms and say, well, that's me, I can't take it either. And that's just not true. It's not like that. It is when I say that there's someone who can't accept or won't accept the ticket to freedom. I mean, it's really, this is all crazy, right? It just didn't make any sense at all. Notice it doesn't have to. So recognizing that there's pain, and guess what else there is? There can be a threat and it can be an immediate threat to financial health, right? Especially with this COVID thing going around. I mean, everybody's been bumped a little bit, and some people have been bumped a hell of a lot. And I feel very sorry about that. I really do. I would love to take your pain away. I'm going to have a better chance of taking that pain away if you have gotten involved in this and you were already in this. And then I can sometimes, magically, I swear to God, this happened yesterday, was that I said, there was a guy who wrote me, he woke up some years ago, and in an awakening session with me. And then and it was great for a while. And then he fell out of his awakening, so to speak. And he knew he needed help. And so I think he came to me last spring and we talked, and that helped him. But then that passed and he came back. And I don't want to be a chiropractor. It's not that I don't want him back. I want him back, but I don't want him back with the very same complaint. And I mean, it doesn't mean I'm not willing to see him. It means for his sake, I want him to get better. And he was suffering pretty good bit. I mean, actually I had 2 people last week exactly the same way, except I don't know if one of them may not have woken up through me, but he had woken up one way or the other. And just a few words from me and they were fine. I swear to God. Don't think that kind of thing doesn't shock me too, because it does. Because, you know, Fred can't do stuff like that. Then number one, there's no Fred to do it. And number 2, this is just an average guy. I'm no different than you. I'm just an average guy, but was born in a middle-class family that was barely hanging on to middle class during my childhood, and became firmly middle class later. I didn't excel in school. I was not the king of the girls. I wasn't good at sports. I mean, you can't get more average Joe than this, right? So I didn't have anything in particular going for me that you don't have going for you. That's the key. There's no secret sauce over here. It's just a regular guy. Woke up just like you have, or you will, or you won't, maybe perhaps. But a lot of people who have gotten this far will go further. And you sometimes people only need to get this far. I had a guy that this week. He's on the internet. As a matter of fact, he's on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and you check, you'll see. Let me just see what the name of that video is. And the name of it is, okay, Nonduality, Fred and Ehab. That's IHAB. Fred and Ehab talk about Ehab's awakening experiences. So that's the name of it. Fred and Ehab talk about Ehab's awakening experiences. And he woke up he didn't actually have to do a session with me, which just seems wrong because I didn't make any money out of that. But he woke up from one of my videos, as a whole hell of a lot of people do, just so you know. And a lot of people wake up from my videos. People wake up from my audiobooks on a regular, books, period, but especially from the audiobooks on a quite regular basis. And it took, and he actually didn't need any words. But what I'm trying to do is tell you that in order to awaken, for most people, you're going to have to get seriously involved. And this guy had been seriously involved in non-duality for years, and he just stumbled across me a few weeks ago. And I don't think he'd ever heard of me. Which doesn't do my ego any good. And but one way or the other, he could hear it clear, and he came here and he woke up from the video, and then he came to me in an attempt to, if you will, this is bad language. I know all you non-dualists. I know this is not true. I'm going to say it anyway, in order to sustain his awakening. And that is a big, big lie. But for languaging purposes here today, those of you who are awake will forgive me. And those of you who are not probably don't even see the error. And don't worry, because you will. It'll come. It didn't come from me for a long time, 24 years over here as a seeker. I'm not a quick study. But these dark nights that I want to discuss, in pre-awakening, dark nights are almost always centered on what's in between me and my awakening. And it can be the financial thing. I could if I could just get my finances straightened out, I could relax and I could pay attention to spirituality, and then I'd wake up and then it'd all be good. That's what I was thinking. I just needed to take care of these finances first. What I didn't understand at that time, which I do now, is that the finances never get fixed. You're always working on it, right? I mean, even the rich people I know, hell, they're working on it too, right? And they don't even need to, but they're doing it. And it's because it's what we do. We stay busy that way, I guess. I don't know. But the finances don't get remedied when you make a little more money. You just find out that all you need is a little more. And then you need a little more than that, and a little more than that. And it's the same way with drugs, alcohol, any of these, the gambling, any of these things. Somebody once told me that I can't quit drinking. And that's a bolt of lightning over here for me. I can't quit drinking. And I can't quit resisting while resisting. So what we want to do is we want to recognize that what I know is wrong. I had a wonderful session this week with a really lovely woman, 77 years old. And she'd been on the path all of her life. And there was a lot of inherent wakefulness over there. I mean, there really was. You know, she was just a lovely human being, but prior to awakening. And but she went all her life, and she didn't know who she was. She just didn't get it. But she was another one who stumbled across me. She'd never heard of me either. And said, you know, this guy's making sense. I can feel something. I can hear something. And they came. They had lifetimes of dark nights of the soul, and neither one of these people needed one immediately prior to awakening. So you can't tell the timing on these things. You can get hit with a tragedy and it doesn't affect you too deeply, but you notice that it doesn't go away either, that there's some kind of a splinter in there that's just constantly annoying you. And then one day that splinter comes out, and when it does, it hurts. It breaks the skin from the inside and it hurts. But then the splinter is out. And awakening is the splinter, probably lots of splinters, breaking through the skin from the inside. And they're hurting, but man, are you lighter once they're out. Because even these little tiny splinters, they weigh about 40 pounds a piece. And you come out and it's just, there is, I mean, not always. It's not like, it doesn't have to be like that. There doesn't anything have to be like anything. Oh, I should mention this, that so many of you come to me in search really of not awakenings, but bells and whistles, that I have decided that I'm not going to fight anymore your desires for bells and whistles. So I got a bell, I got a whistle. And that's the end of your spiritual experience. You can't come away from this and say, I was looking for an experience with bells and whistles and didn't get one. So you got your bells and whistles. Now let's talk about the important thing, which is awakening, which has nothing to do with bells and whistles, although bells and whistles may accompany it. But when we have been in a place of great suffering, and awakening occurs, then a lot of times it is going to be a bells and whistles thing, at least if not physically, if you don't see things or hear things or get energetic pulses or anything like that, you might get all of those. You might get 2 of those, might get 1, you might get none. But when you get these, like a euphoric state is what everybody's in search of. Like, you know, the hallucinations and stuff, that's really great. But what I'm really looking for is a euphoric state, a sustained euphoric state. Well, you're not going to have it. You're just not. There is a very quiet sort of bliss over here, but bliss is not really the right word for it, but I don't know the right word for it. It just means that there's this great okayness. And if you've been living in the, oh my godness, and you reach the great okayness, that's going to be such a relief that there may be bells and whistles that come with that. When I got bells and whistles when I woke up, both in 1992 and 2006. But I think both times it was because I was about 1 million miles away from awakening. So that when awakening like unveiled itself, then there was like a shock, like, oh my God, you know, the body just got hit with some kind of overwhelm, and boom, we had bells and whistles. And and it wasn't long before I was, but I mean, it was almost no time in 1992 before I was going, did that really happen? Did that really happen? So the idea that I want this as evidence, it just doesn't work. So bells and whistles are okay. They are not the opposite of unconscious awakeness. Conscious awakeness, if you will, there's really no opposite, but in just for languaging's sake, we can say that conscious awakeness is the opposite of unconscious awakeness. And what we mean is, by that, what I'm saying is that my neighbors, they are abiding in unconscious awakeness. They are abiding as unconscious awakeness in a world of unconscious awakeness. Whereas over here, there is conscious awakeness. There's no Fred, but there's conscious awakeness. And there is now, yeah, it's fair to say abiding in and as conscious awakeness, but that doesn't mean I'm hopping around all the time. It doesn't mean I'm applauding every arising. I know that that what we gotta do is love what is, but I'm noticing that don't happen right away. Yeah. So what we have to do is we have to become okay with what is. I believe that's as far as Krishnamurti got, because that's what he said, right? So being okay with what happens. And see, the thing is that I'm okay with what happens, except for, whoop, and there's my dark night of the soul. Except for the fact that my girlfriend doesn't love me anymore, my wife doesn't love me anymore, my father just died, I don't have any money, people don't understand me, I came from the wrong side of the street, or I came from the right side of the street, which means I haven't had enough suffering, because there are people out there that don't believe they've had enough suffering, so they need a dark night of the soul, but they're in it. Because if you're thinking you need a dark night in the soul, that's not true, unless it is, but you're already in that dark night of the soul, because you're thinking that there's something missing, and you don't know what to do. You don't know where to turn to. It's so confusing. They tell me to surrender. How do I do that? Well, the question there is to look and see who it is that's being advised to surrender, because there's no Fred here. Well, in the absence of a Fred, there's no suffering. So it's an easy surrender. but it isn't Fred that surrenders. It's a whiteness that surrenders to relativity. There is only one thing going on. So there is not one thing to surrender to another thing. Look at this. It's the math of one. Can it get more plain than this? One means one. And there is not one thing that can surrender to another thing. That would be two things. That would be duality. And that when we're playing that story, we're playing a dualistic story, which is what most seekers are doing it without knowing it. I did it a long, long time, and I didn't know it, and it didn't make me bad or guilty of or anything like that. You know, I mean, yeah, when I woke up, there was this sense of, man, how did I miss this? That's common. And God, Monty, I should have seen this years ago, but I noticed that that's a lie. I should see it exactly when I see it. And you should be clear and calm exactly when you're clear and calm. And until then, this feeling that if you can just believe, you know, Nisargadatta talked about trusting his teacher. That didn't mean that he turned over his banking information or slept with his guru or anything like that. It just means that he believed what he told him in regard to this. So I can tell you, you don't need a dark night of the soul. Be happy with where you are and what you've got. You don't need it. So why make up the story that you do need it? Because that is I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna get whatever it is I'm missing, happiness or love or whatever, security or, you know, whatever. And then I'll be okay. But you're not gonna get those things. Love is not stationary, and really nothing is, but these things, experiences come and go. You don't. You're that which does not come and go, but you're that, you know, when we say you're that which does not come and go, I only say that because I'm speaking from a position that nothing comes and goes, because there's nothing. So you don't come and go, but I'm not talking about separation. You can't come and go when there's no place to come to or go to. You can't fall into oneness and you can't fall out of it. You're in it. There's no way for you to get out, but you can think you're out and you can suffer. I have a financial distress. I have physical distress. If I could just get the pain to die down. If I just did not have this terminal cancer, I would be okay. Now, I have dealt with people who were in the latter stages of a terminal illness, and there was really very little I could do then, because by that time, pain had become the everyday dominant feature of their lives. It's just excruciating. I'm probably not going to be able to get through to those people. I might, but I'm not. But I'm certainly not hanging a placard out that I can do it. It's a hospital, not an emergency room. Come in now. Prior to that, if you're not in a dark night of the soul, don't believe you need one. Just come in. And when I say come in, what do I mean? I just mean wake up. And I don't, and there's nothing that can wake up, but that's a term we use. That's a term we use that will make sense for us to be able to language some of this. I have no idea how long this video is now. It is beginning to feel like it's been a long time. There can be a dark night of the soul prior to awakening, but it's not guaranteed. But a dark night of the soul prior to awakening is no guarantee. You can have a dark night of the soul. It can be terrible and awful. You can endure it, and you get nowhere. I had a friend of mine who has just come through a really awful cancer ordeal with cancer, and what was I going to say? I've forgotten exactly what I was going to draw. from that to share with you. And I told him, if you don't use this in order to if you don't use this to surrender, then as soon as this cancer is gone, your problems are going to begin again. Same old problems you had. You'll be worried about money again, and love and security and all that, and your physical health and all that kind of stuff. And that turned out to be the case. But now the good news is, and this can be you too, if you did not use that dark night of the soul to see that there's my God there, I can't stop it. There's nothing I can do. You can recognize there's nothing that you can do about your present situation. You'll wake up. But that isn't an instruction to ego. That's an instruction to awakeness. It's really an instruction to unconscious awakeness, which is sort of wavering on the razor's edge. A lot of people come here, they're already on the razor's edge. Very few people will start with these teachings, and I'm sure they're very confusing if they do. Because here I think we tell it straight. I mean, that's what is being attempted, but not by Fred. It's just being attempted. Dark night of awakening in post-awakening is the same thing. It's identification. You've simply gone back into a shell, which you may have never, probably didn't completely leave the first time you woke up. And now you got to have a repeat. But the one who's got to have a repeat of awakening never had the first one. That's the truth. Because it's ego that wants to awaken again, and ego didn't wake up the first time. The thought character didn't wake up the first time. This body didn't wake up the first time. I didn't wake up the first time. I came to notice that I was already awake. And this is what you have to see. This is what you have to see, and you don't have to go through a dark night of the soul to get it. But if you need a dark night of the soul, which apparently I did, you can bet you'll have one. But the idea that I haven't had one and I need one and I want one, that is insane. I would not wish my life on anybody. I wouldn't wish my life, the trail of my life, I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I really would not. It's worked out just fine for me, and there was a lot of fun that was had, but boy, was it like this. And those downward plows are, whoo, deep and terrible. Well, the words seem to be slowing down, so I guess it's done. So lovely being with you. Thank you for your attention, and I hope that I will see you again very soon. Come to satsang. Come to satsang. Read the books or listen to the audiobooks, even better. Dig deep. If you're digging a well trying to find water, you don't dig 20 shallow holes. You take one hole, you dig it deep. You're sitting here, you're in front of this. That means that there's a strong possibility that you're not that far from awakening. You're actually already awake. So I'm just speaking in the normal language right now, which doesn't make any real spiritual sense, but it's understood, at least from unit to unit. Go deep. They did not tell monks didn't need there was a library in the monastery, but the monks didn't need a big library. They were not told to read widely. They were told to read deeply. And I would tell you, you are much better off, and it doesn't have to be me, it can be somebody else, but you are much better off getting into, if you get involved with the teaching, take it to its logical end. If you, and if along the way you find out it's not for you, bail. But make sure it's not for you. Make sure it's either inauthentic or that you simply can't hear it. If that either one of those things is true, bail. I'll see you again soon. I'll try not to stay away so long. See you. Bye-bye.